What we're gonna do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
Got to move when the Sixers rock and we got the groove. So keep it on with DR.J and Moses Malone.
Presenting the Sixers starters. Number 10, Mo Jesus. At the other guard, number 22, Andrew Toney. At forward, number 8, Mark Iverson. And a fellow forward, number 6, captain of the Eastern Conference Championship team, forward Julius Irving. And now, the board-crushing man, number 2, Super Center, Moses Malone.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Paulie Black, aka Don Paulion on Twitter. And of course, you know I am the realest fan on YouTube. In the 1982-83 season, this was the #1 song on the airways of Philadelphia because our Philadelphia 76ers had finally gotten over the hump and they brought the NBA championship back to Philadelphia. And right now, we stand at a very, very exciting time here in Philadelphia as we get ready for the draft. And we have 2 top 10 picks this year. The 3rd pick in the draft and the 10th pick after coming off last year's draft where we acquired this year's Rookie of the Year, Michael Carter-Williams. And the consensus #1 pick, had he not been injured, Nerlens Noel. And I'd like to look back on this franchise because this is a storied franchise. If you're not familiar with my Philadelphia 76ers, this is a storied franchise, okay? So before we talk about the future, let's just go back and look at where we came from. Okay, this is the 3rd winningest franchise in NBA history. Okay, so that tells you right there, we've played a lot of ball, we've beaten a lot of teams. Okay, for a long time, I'll say during the early part of the 80s, the 3 powerhouse teams in the NBA was the Sixers, the Celtics, and the Lakers. Okay, we talking about a 76ers team in the 80s that was in the finals 3 out of 4 years. Okay, 79 and 80, 80, 81, and then 82, 83. Okay, and we were in the finals 3 out of 4 years. You just don't see that. And the teams that did that in the 80s, we talk about them now as a dynasty. And we should be talking about those Philadelphia 76ers as a dynasty. But we'll get into that. Okay. I got some great stuff coming up on the show. Later on in the show, I have the first installment of Thunderdome. Okay. I'm pretty sure if you're a basketball guy, you'll get a real good kick out of this. So let's get into those Sixers. Okay. Like I said, the 3rd winningest franchise in NBA history. Okay. We are a team of dominance and tenacity. This is a blue-collar city. Everybody knows what you're going to get when you play a Philadelphia team. You're going to get grit. You're going to get hard-nosed. You're going to get feistiness. You're going to be in for a fight. It doesn't matter the franchise. Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers. When you come to Philadelphia, you see them on your schedule, you're in for a fight. Okay, it doesn't matter how bad they are during the season, you are in for a fight. Okay, so there's been, in my lifetime, 3 major eras in the Sixers franchise, and I've been a witness to 2 full ones and the tail end of another. Okay, at 37 right now, I saw the whole Charles Barkley era and the entire Allen Iverson era. I loved every moment of both of them. They didn't produce a championship, but it wasn't through lack of those 2 players, because they gave everything they had. That's why they are so revered here in this town. Okay, the tail end of the career I came on was Doc. And the DR.J era is the era that we talking about, where we should be talking about the Sixers franchise as a dynasty. Okay, so let's talk about the DR.J era. Okay, Doc was the flagship for the ABA. Okay, he was the LeBron of the ABA. And the ABA was merging with the NBA. And Doc played for the Nets. The Nets could not afford to keep Doc, so the Sixers office bought DR.J's contract for $3 million. Okay, and as soon as they bought Doc's contract, he became a Sixer. They go right to the championship. Now, they lost that first championship with Doc in 76-77. They lost to the Portland Trail Blazers with Big Red Bill Walton. Okay, they were up 2-0, and they lost 4 straight. And the players came back with a motto saying that we owe you one, because they know that they should not have lost that series. But it happens. But I like the fact that they were pissed about it. Okay, it's not something that you really see a lot today. You know, a lot of guys just figure, well, I'm getting paid, it doesn't matter. But back then it was about winning. And they were pissed that they blew a 2-0 lead on that series and allowed them to win 4 straight. So they came back and they struggled for a couple years. You know, we couldn't get over the hump. We had some good players, but we couldn't get over the hump. We couldn't get back to the championship until 1979-80 season. Okay, and they just happened to run into the Rookie of the Year, the future Hall of Famer. His name was Earvin Magic Johnson, and this is a legendary game for guys who are about, I'll say, 45 and up. This is a legendary game because Magic Johnson played all 5 positions that game, scored 42 points, 15 rebounds. Okay, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had sprained his ankle. Magic tipped off his center, played all 5 positions, and they won the series 4-2. Come back out, Sixers right back in the fight again. They lose to Boston in the Eastern Conference Championship. They come back out. No, did they lose to Boston? No, they didn't lose to Boston the following year. They lost to somebody else. But they come back in the 81-82 season. Come back, they playing the Lakers again. Get up there, they lose that series to the Lakers. Okay, then at that time, the owner, Harold Katz, made one of the best trades, one of the greatest trades in Philadelphia sports franchise history, any franchise. He made a trade with the Houston Rockets to acquire Moses Malone, who at that time was just an absolute beast. Okay, Moses was a force. Okay, he was a freak in nature. He was just virtually almost unstoppable in the paint. Okay, so they acquire Moses Malone, and they turn around and go right back to the finals the next year. Now, you take Moses, you add Moses to Mo Cheeks, DR.J, Bobby Jones, and another guy. And this guy here in Philadelphia, in one word, is a sniper. But if you go up the East Coast to those, and ask anybody who represents the green and white, they would call him the Boston Strangler. And his name was Andrew Toney. And when I say this cat was for real, this dude was for real. There was not a player in a green and white jersey that could stop Andrew Toney. The writers embossed him because of the games he had against the Boston Celtics. The writers in Boston nicknamed him the Boston Strangler because he took it as a personal challenge to destroy the Boston Celtics every time they played the Sixers.
This Spectrum moment takes us to March 21st, 1982. In just his second season, the Boston Strangler, Andrew Toney, scores 25 points in the fourth quarter against the Celtics. It still stands as the franchise record for the highest point total in a single quarter.
Okay, it was just like, we playing Boston. Oh, I think I need to drop 35, 40 tonight. And he would go out there and do it. So, after that season, they lost the 81-82 season. They come back, they get Moses. They go back in 82-83, and they win the championship. Now, the 82-83 season was the championship year. They turned right around, and then the 1984 draft, which has been deemed the greatest draft of all time because of the Hall of Famers that it produced, and the Hall of Famers and All-Stars that it produced. These Philadelphia 76ers comprised of Mo Cheeks, Mark Iverson, DR.J, Andrew Toney, Moses Malone, and then they add this man.
The Philadelphia 76ers select Charles Barkley of Auburn University.
The round mound of rebound, tipping the scales, the latest at 300 pounds. He is one of the most exciting players to come out of college. And he now will be alongside Julius Erving and Moses Malone in the city of brotherly love.
Now, you're talking about one of the most exciting upcoming players in college basketball. Okay, Charles, the Chuck Wagon, the Crisco Kid, the human bread truck, the round mound of rebound. You're adding Charles Barkley to that starting five. They should be talking about this franchise as a dynasty, okay? When Charles got here, Charles is coming off the Olympic trials, okay? When Charles went to the Olympic trials, he always tells the story. He got to the Olympic trials, and he dominated. And when he walked away from those Olympic trials, because he was not selected by then Indiana Hoosier coach Bobby Knight, who was the coach of the U.S. Olympic team, he walked away saying two things. One, I can compete at this level with no problem. And two, the only guy that was here that was better than me was some guy from North Carolina named Michael Jordan. Now, it just stands the fact that they happen to be best friends because they've been competing against each other since college. Okay? So, with that said, you add Charles Barkley to the mix, we should be poised for another championship run. Okay? And I don't know what happened, what the decision was, but it just wasn't a good one. Okay? It wasn't a good one. Okay, at the beginning of the 85, going into the 85-86 season, okay, and the exact date that the actual worst, we going from the best trade in franchise history, in Philadelphia sports history, by one man, Harold Katz, who turns around and makes the absolute worst trade in Philadelphia sports history, okay? Because on June 16th, 1986,
a date which will live in infamy,
Katz traded Moses Malone to the Washington Bullets for Jeff Ruland and Cliff Robinson, okay? Then he turns around and trades the first pick in the draft to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Roy Henson, who was the definition of a stiff. Okay, this guy only had good games against the Sixers. Now, that 85 pick, that number one pick, turned out to be Brad Daugherty. Now, can you imagine Brad Daugherty and Charles Barkley, along with Moses Malone, DR.J, Andrew Toney, Mo Cheeks, we would have ran the East for another 5 or 6 years. Okay, we would have dominated the NBA. Okay, they will be talking about us. Like I said, I'm beating a dead horse, but they will be talking about us as a dynasty had you added those two guys. Okay, I don't know what Katz was thinking, but he overthought this one, and he crippled this franchise to the point where it never recovered. It's never recovered, because since the 82-83 season, this franchise has only been back to the finals one time. That trade of Moses Malone and that number 1 pick crippled this franchise for decades. Okay, now Charles comes in. Moses takes him under his wing. Charles Barkley becomes the Hall of Famer that we know and love today. Okay, Charles gave everything he had out there on the floor, and the way they did him, they had a superstar, and the owner at the time strictly was about money. He never gave Charles any real help. He always brought in guys that were past their prime, or they drafted a bunch of stiffs, and Charles just never had a shot. He just never really had a chance. We had some good teams in the early 90s, but we kept running into Chicago with Michael Jordan. And Mike had help, and Charles didn't. Plain and simple. Okay, so when they traded Charles Barkley to Phoenix, it was no shock to Sixer fans that Charles would turn right around and become the MVP of the league that year and go right to the finals. And his team had the best record in the league because he finally had some help. Now, once again, he ran into Michael, and it was a good series, but his help just didn't come through for him when he needed him to. Charles did his job. He does what he always do. His supporting cast just didn't have enough. Michael did. You know, they were on that 6 championship run, 6 out of 8 years. You know, they was unstoppable. So nobody really can hold that against Charles. You know, when you're going up against the best ever, you know, in his prime, what can you do? Okay, but when Charles left, we in Philadelphia called the years from when Charles Barkley got traded until I think it was 1990. I think it was 90. What? Let me see. I think 90. I can't remember what year Iverson was drafted, but it was the late 90s. I think it was like 96. I think it was 96. And yes, exactly, it was 96. We called that time the Dark Ages because the guys that they brought in and tried to convince us, not just as Sixer fans, but as fans of basketball, the guys they tried to convince us could play and lead this franchise back to glory was just ridiculous. Sharon Wright, Clarence Witherspoon, Sean Bradley. Are you serious? You really gonna tell me that Sean Bradley is gonna lead this team back to glory? It was ridiculous. Okay, but then this happened.
With the first pick in the 1996 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Allen Iverson from Georgetown University.
And basketball had finally come back to Philadelphia. We had a reason to shout once again, okay? Because the question was, who was Philadelphia going to draft that was going to bring a sense of glory and honor back to this franchise? And we drafted the answer, Allen Iverson. And from the first time he walked on the floor to the last time he walked on the floor, he gave us everything he had every night, okay? I was there when he put Michael Jordan on skates. And I'm telling you, we thought the roof was going to blow off the building.
As a kid, Allen had bragged to his coach about taking MJ. And now, he'd finally get his chance.
When I grabbed the ball, I heard Phil Jackson yell, "Michael."
Iverson has Jordan. The crowd is into it.
I gave him a little cross to see would he bite on it. I let him set his feet, and then I stepped it back again.
Allen shakes free, gets two! Mike said no. Allen said yes. The bucket, the crowd loves it.
This guy was 160 pounds soaking wet, barely 6 feet, and he was the most feared player in the league. Okay, he was virtually unstoppable. The things he did on the floor was ridiculous. The way he could score at will was just, it was amazing. Okay, it was amazing. And the thing about it was, Charles Barkley told Allen Iverson what they were going to do here in Philadelphia because they did it to Charles. And their ownership then was the same way the ownership was when Charles was here. We got a guy that everybody wants to go see. Let's market him. Let's make a lot of money. And when he can't produce for us, we'll cut bait and let him go. And that's what they did to Allen Iverson. Okay, they brought in Big Dog Robinson when he was finished. They brought in Chris Webber when he was finished. They brought in Elton Brand when he was finished. Okay, and then Allen Iverson he never had the supporting cast to get him over the hump. Now his team in 2000 was the only team to take us back to the finals since 82-83. So you count the years between 82 and 83 to 2000, 2001. And that's the drought. You talking about a team that was just in the finals 3 out of 4 years. And then from 83 to 2000, not even get a sniff of the NBA finals until Allen Iverson got here. Okay? So when I look at this franchise, I see what could have been, what should have been, and now I stand at a key point in the crossroads, excited at what could be. Because now what could be is 4 top 10 picks on the floor for our Philadelphia 76ers next season. Okay? 4. Michael Carter-Williams, Nerlens Noel, the 3rd round pick from this year and a 10th round pick from this year will be on the floor for our 76ers next year. And I'm excited. I am extremely excited. Now, we have multiple 2nd round picks. So we're going to have guys that we're going to be able to work out and field a team. And we could go, knowing Brett Brown coming off of the Greg Popovich coaching tree, Brett Brown's going to want this team to be able to go anywhere from 8 to 9 players deep, which is beautiful. If you saw the way the San Antonio Spurs were able to just totally dismantle the Miami Heat because they just had more guys helping out than LeBron did. So this team right now is at a they're in a very, very good position. And I'm excited. As a Sixer fan, this is probably the most excitement we've had in a long, long time. Okay, a long, long time. But with that said, it's time for the first installment of Thunderdome.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
This is the truth of it. Fighting leads to killing, and killing gets to warring, and that was damn near the death of us all. Now when men get to fighting, it happens here, and it finishes here. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And right now, I've got 2 men. 2 men with a gut full of fear. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
All right, everybody. The rules of Thunderdome is simple. Take the top 5 players in your opinion. This is a personal thing. Your personal opinion. Take the top 5 players of your favorite franchise, and then take the top 5 players of your most hated rival and match them up. Now, for this first edition of Thunderdome, I'm going to select my top 5 Philadelphia 76ers and match them up against the top 5, in my opinion, of the greatest Boston Celtics of all time. Now, the rules is this. Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell are Titans. They are beyond lists. So they are excluded from this game, okay? Because it would start with them and it would never end, okay? Now, I would suggest you go players that you've actually seen, but you can go back as far as whoever you want to go back to. But those guys are off limits, okay? They are totally off limits. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain are off the grid, okay? So, let's start out with those hated Boston Celtics. Now, for me, I'll say the top 5 Boston Celtics of all time, in my opinion, are at point guard, John Havlicek. At 2 guard, Paul Pierce. At the 3, Larry Bird. At power forward, Kevin McHale. And at center, the Chief, Robert Parrish. Now, I know you Boston fans can say Cousy and the list goes on. You know, Boston has they have a storied history, a lot of great players. But I'm going with that 5. Havlicek, Pierce, Bird, McHale, Parrish. And for my Philadelphia 76ers, I'm going to go starting at point guard. For the all-time 76ers, we have number 10, Maurice Cheeks. At 2 guard, 6 foot, 160 pounds, the answer, Allen Iverson. At small forward, we have one of the league's most elite players, Julius the Dr. Irving. At power forward, we have none other than the round mound of rebound, Sir Charles Barkley. And at center, we have Moses Malone. So, we have Havlicek, Pierce, Bird, McHale versus Cheeks, Iverson, Doc, Barkley, and Moses. Welcome to Thunderdome. Have a good night. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your responses. And I will definitely be back with you. The Eagles, next Eagles video, will be talking about some of the undrafted free agents they picked up and some guys they picked up in free agency. Once again, this was Thunderdome. Holla at your boy one time. And as I always say,
even if my performance is local, I'm still considered the Michael Corleone of the vocals.